Okay, good morning, parents. Thank you to so many of you for joining us here this morning for our PE and sports webinar. My name is Robert Bradshaw. I am Vice Principal here at West Island for Year 7 to Year 9. And we've got with us online this morning Mr. Owen Cobley, who is the Head of PE and Sports, and Miss Mai Schroder, who is the NYP Coordinator for PE and a teacher of PE here at West Island. And what we just wanted to do this morning was we wanted to take the opportunity just to share with parents, but especially with new parents of Year 7 students, the opportunity to ask some questions and receive some information about sports. So our sports program has now been up and running for one term. And obviously, as you would expect over the course of the term, especially for new parents, quite a lot of questions have emerged about PE and sport, parents wanting to know certain types of information about sports team selection, about training, about matches, and about transport. And all of those questions are completely normal, and some of them are sort of reoccurring. So rather than dealing with them all ad hoc independently by email, we thought it was just a great opportunity to get Owen and the PE department here online this morning to answer your questions. Now, PE and sport is a huge source of pride for us here at WIS. Last year, we had 650 of our 1,200 students participating in competitive sport and representing the school. And what we're really proud of is that we give all students that want to the opportunity to participate in sport here at WIS, and we give them the opportunity to participate in competitive sport and have that amazing school experience of playing sport against other schools and it being a really formative experience and an experience that develops a sense of pride and belonging in your school. And it's one of the main ways we do that at WIS. But as a result, we've got a lot of sport going on. We've got a lot of very busy, hardworking teaching staff who then also take the responsibility for organising and taking a lot of these fixtures. And we end up with a very busy and at times quite complicated picture. And as a result, we did want to give parents the opportunity to ask some questions and Owen the opportunity to clarify as many of those as possible for parents. We're also going to have Mai. She's going to be in the background, so she's not going to be speaking to you, but the Q&A will be open and live during the whole webinar. And if you've got any questions at all, please feel free to jot these down in the Q&A, and Mai's going to answer those for you to the best of her ability throughout the session. And then if we have any final questions towards the end of the session, Owen will be able to answer those live for you. We've got about 45 minutes here this morning. We are going to have to put a bit of a hard stop on it at about 11:50 because we're going to have to get to some lessons for period 4, but that does give us a 45-minute period now. Owen's going to give you a presentation and then some opportunities to ask some questions. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Owen.
Many thanks, Rob. Appreciate the introduction there. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to chat about PE and sport. It's something which is, as Rob said, a massive source of pride for West Island and something which we will always strive to make a fantastic experience for the students. As Rob said, it is a large programme, and I can see where some confusion and some questions may have arisen from. We obviously look at this through very much a teacher's lens and an organisational lens, and sometimes we do miss things from a parent's point of view. So hopefully I can give some more context today about what the sports programme is, how it operates, and kind of give you a good overall picture of how things are operating. So there we go. So the program itself is really large. It's really varied. As Rob said, we had 650 students representing school last year. It is entirely inclusive as well. For the most part, where possible, we will always give students the opportunity to participate in competitive sports. We want students to have a wonderful experience of West Island sport, but also we want them to develop, we want to progress, we want to improve their skills so they can take those skills onto university, into sort of social settings once they leave West Island. And ultimately as well, we have a very good sporting pedigree at West Island. We have always been successful across many different sports, and we want to continue that. So we feel we have a really balanced programme. Last year, we had 650 students with 80 teams, and that was in about 16 sports, and that culminated in one shy of 500, a big 499 fixtures, which for a school of our size is pretty huge. This year, currently, we've got 665 students who are participating in a sports CAS activity. That is every single week. We have about 60 hours a week where students are available to come to West Island and our facilities to train, to receive coaching and to play sports. That also doesn't include fixtures. As you just heard, we have 499 last year. We're probably going to be there or thereabouts again this year. And it kind of averages out to about 15 per week, which on average is about 30 additional hours, whereby we are offering opportunity for students. But obviously, that has some quite significant organisational burden and issues as well. Before we go too deep into it, I think it's important that we discuss the ethos of the program. We do want it to be inclusive, and we do want students to develop their skills. It's all about opportunity. It's all about participation and developing skills and a love for the sport. This has got to be done in a really safe environment, not only physical, but the emotional safety. So students feel welcome, they feel confident in able to becoming a part of that sports program. We want students to develop respect, fair play, and integrity. This is a really soft skill that can be developed in an authentic way through sports, and a really big sense of community as well. As we said, sport at West Island is a huge part of the community and a big source of pride. We do have a commitment to excellence. We have a high performance student athlete program. We are frequently participating in the highest levels of school sports available to us. And that's on a personal level as well, through things like Jing Ying, which I'll talk about later, and in the highest divisions of HKSF and ISFHK. And we want people to be dedicated to achieving well and also improving. We can't do that without a relatively balanced approach to things as well. So we want to strike a balance between sport, academics, and personal life. So we feel this is a great opportunity for students to learn about these skills, which they can take into later life in terms of balancing the demands of a work-life balance, a social life balance, and then also exercise as well and being active. So that's the kind of ethos of the program, and we are always striving to meet those 5 sort of guiding principles. In terms of competitive sport, it's important to discuss the 2 competitions that we're part of. One is the International School Sports Federation of Hong Kong, otherwise known as ISFHK. I will be abbreviating that to ISF because it's a real mouthful. And then the other one is HKSSF, Hong Kong School Sports Federation. I'll be abbreviating that to HKSF because it's just so hard to say without tripping over yourself. It's important that we understand what these conferences are, so that when we come to things like team selection, etc., and why certain students participate in certain age grades and things like that, everyone has a pretty clear understanding. So the ISFHK, you can see in the blue column, this is generally for international schools only, where the HKSF is for all of the local schools and some of the bigger international schools. So other ESF schools like South Island, KG5 participate, as do HKS and CIS and Kellet. With the ISFHK, it's split into 4 very distinctive seasons. We are just about a week into season 2 now. That will run up until Chinese New Year, and then season 3 will start after Chinese New Year up until about Easter time, and then season 4 will run from after Easter up until sort of the start of summer. In comparison to HKSF, it's not quite as clearly defined. Age group competitions generally happen throughout the course of the year. They are not nailed down. They are sort of like in rough timeframes within certain months. For example, A grade boys basketball happens between September and November. And that generally is the same every year. With the ISFHK, we have a little bit more flexibility in what we can do. We have some flexibility with regards to playing days. We can move fixtures around if they don't meet our sort of requirements in terms of holidays or no play days. And generally it's less rigid. With the HKSF, it's very, very strict, very officious. We have to meet requirements with regards to kit, with regards to registration and timelines, and calendaring can be quite problematic, whereby, for example, last week we were on Horizons Week and it clashed with HKSF Athletics Day 1, which obviously is a real frustration for us, whereas we generally don't have those frustrations with the ISFHK. With the international schools competition, it does require a lot more communication from us as staff on an organisational level. We have to host fixtures, which obviously is a fantastic opportunity for our students to play at home and in our facilities and in front of crowds, hopefully. But that does come with logistical challenges as well. With the HKSF, we don't have any organisational burden, but we get told where to be. The referees are there, but obviously with that comes the lack of flexibility. The origins of the ISFHK were sort of created as an alternative to the HKSF, but it is a massively growing organisation, and the volume of fixtures is growing, the number of schools are growing, the number of teams that are participating in the competition are growing, and it is now becoming to the point where it is almost just as dominant as the HKSF. With the HKSF, there's a level prestige which is associated with it. A lot of the big local schools take huge pride in coming top of Division One athletics, for example. We're talking like LaSalle College, St. Joe's, DBS, DGS, some of these local schools. And we get the opportunity to participate in the Jing competitions. And this is where we go up against the very best that Hong Kong has to offer, both in terms of individual and team sports. There comes some selection criteria with that, but frequently we are participating in these Jing competitions. When we look at both competitions and conferences together, they're comparable quality. The experience that the students are getting generally is very competitive. We value all of those equally, as do the students. But most importantly, it mostly allows for year-round competition and training and something to build towards for the vast majority of our students. With regards to these competitions, there are some quite strict age group guidelines, and I think this is important as we move towards discussing students being selected for different teams. So for the HKSF, we have A grade, B grade, and C grade. Generally speaking, C grade is for year 8s and year 9s, B grade year 10s and 11s, A grade 12s and 13s. Year 7s can be eligible for C grade, but generally it's unlikely as they are competing against students from the sort of top end of year 9. So it's quite unusual for year 7s to be involved in the HKSF competitions. One of the big perks of the ISFHK is that there are under 12 competitions, which year 7s are eligible for, and then we have U14, U16, and U20. I'll talk a bit more about the year 7 competitions a little bit later on. But those age grades and competitions are useful to be aware of. One of the questions we kind of get asked relatively frequently is about sport and CAS. And these two things are very closely interwoven. We can allow students to attend a CAS and not participate in a competitive sport. That's absolutely fine. As we discussed, the ethos of the program is for inclusivity and opportunity. By that same token, there might be situations where a student doesn't attend a CAS activity, but is still able to represent school in a competition. For example, if we've got some really high-level tennis players who will not come and participate in the tennis CAS, some really high-level swimmers who are operating out of the Sports Institute, they generally won't consistently attend the CAS activity, but they can still represent the school teams in those. Okay. In terms of selection, generally they're selected through the CAS activity, through participation. This means that the coaches can see how they are in terms of ability. They can work with them to improve. They can play with their teammates. They can buy into the team itself. And also there's a level of commitment that's expected with being part of the sports teams. However, there isn't necessarily a delineation between competitive sport and sports CAS. Sports CAS is very much the opportunity. It's very much the gateway, which kind of leads into sports competition. We do make it as inclusive as possible, and we do this in a couple of ways. We do tend to put in different teams into the ISFHK competition. So we have A teams and B teams. This is particularly common in a lot of our team sports, such as football, netball, basketball, and we'll talk a bit more about that later on. We also host friendly fixtures where possible. It is a very, very busy calendar. So organising friendly fixtures tends to happen outside of the ISFHK season. So for example, we've just had season 1, which was under 14 football. We don't really have the time, the capacity and the facility access to put friendly fixtures on for football within that season. However, as we enter season 2 and football is not, that there's not as many football teams playing in season 2, we do have more capacity to organise things like friendly fixtures, and those will be coming up in the coming weeks in the lead up to Chinese New Year. What we definitely want to get away from, and we don't really do this, is cutting students. I know a lot of schools tend to say, sorry, you didn't make the first team, you're cut, or you didn't sign up in time, unlucky, there is no sport for you. We don't choose the best students and exclude the rest. That's not within our ethos. That's not what we want to do as a sports program. We want to, as best as possible, include as many students for the CAS activities. And if they want to participate, then we want to give them the opportunity to play in fixtures. This may happen outside of the regular competitive season, but where possible through friendly fixtures, for example, we will strive to give students that competitive sporting experience. There may be occasions where we don't have enough students interested in a certain activity or a certain team, and this means we wouldn't potentially enter a team. For example, this year, I think under 14 boys volleyball had 5 students sign up for the sporting CAS. There wasn't a huge amount of interest last year, so we didn't enter a team into that competition. However, it may be that next year we have 20 students available for the U14 boys team, in which case we will enter a volleyball team. So year on year, generally speaking, we will enter as many teams as we possibly can so that students can have that opportunity, but there will be occasions where sometimes it's not possible to, and that will be a decision that's made case by case basis year on year. When it comes to team selection, we generally set squads through the CAS activities and training sessions. We will tell students this verbally or via email. It's also visible around school on the digital display boards. I say generally, this is because we have all year round training. So, for example, year 7, year 8, year 9 football has been happening since the very start of August. Year 7 football haven't actually had any fixtures. However, by virtue of attending that CAS activity, by virtue of the coaches seeing who's coming along, they can look at the ability level. We can understand roughly how many students we have participating. We can look at starting to put those within teams, and then we can set squads. So they're not necessarily trials per se, because we don't really want to put students in that one-off situation when we've seen them participating over the course of weeks and months. But there may be times where we need to run a trial. Again, that's done on a case-by-case basis. At the start of a season, there will be some communication. It varies who sends that communication out. We have a lot of external providers. So if a team is run by an external coach, that will probably be sent out by someone like myself. If it's a teacher running it, for example, Mr. Harding has run under 16 boys football and under 20 boys football, he might send out that start of season email. But that email will outline key procedures, key links in the run up to the start of a season. We do ask families to commit to a season. So once the fixture list has been released and is available on the sports website, we do ask people to sort of move as much around as possible. We incur fines. It jeopardizes our participation in future competitions if we enter a team and then we do not fulfill those fixtures. So it's really important that once a student signs up for a team and indicates they want to play competitive sport, they have to do everything in their power to make sure that they are at that fixture. We don't like being in a position whereby we have 5 students for a 7-a-side football fixture, for example. It's not fair on the students who are turning up, and it puts us in a difficult situation with the ISFHK leagues themselves. So we do ask families to really commit to the season. There are some exceptions with things like cross-country and athletics. There are some organisational reasons for this. Sometimes we're invited to things like mini meets. These are often sent out relatively last minute because they're quite informal. So a host school will send out information relatively late in the day. There are frequently caps on how many students we can take. So there may be an availability sheet which has been sent out by the lead teacher asking students to indicate their availability. And then through the dialogue, either verbally or via email, students will get informed as to whether they are participating in that event. And like I say, it's done on mostly by a case-by-case basis. But in general, a start of season email will go out to those students who are participating. In terms of fixtures and communication, we don't have the capacity to send individual emails regarding individual fixtures as we progress through the course of the season. As you've seen, we average about 15 fixtures a week. It's not feasible, it's not realistic. There are also organizational issues around that. People miss emails, both in terms of being sent and also being received. Frequently, we have communications from students or parents saying, I didn't see that email, sorry, or can you please send this information out? Haven't got an email, and it's gone to like a spam account or something like that. We have a lot of external providers who lead our teams. We don't give them access to your data, so that will come through potentially one person. For example, myself, I would do a lot of communication with regards to basketball because we heavily lean on external providers for that. If I'm playing rugby at weekend and I get a concussion and I can't come to work for a few days, immediately that link in the chain is gone. It's a single point of failure, and we want to avoid that as much as possible. So all the relevant information is on the sports website, and I'm going to go through that shortly. This has all the information related to transport, related to kits, locations, and things like that. It promotes student responsibility so that students do have to take responsibility for looking and monitoring when their fixtures are. They are looking at organising their own schedules and making sure that they are available for those activities. But most of all, and most importantly, I want to stress this, it's very much like a safety net. It's a redundancy. Using the sports website at the back end where we are, we have multiple people looking at this fixture list, at this website, and there are layers of protection. It's a safety net. So if one person misses something, generally somebody else will pick it up. We have multiple sets of eyes on it, and we want to maintain that. We don't want to be operating in a system where there is a single point of failure. So the sports website is a fantastic way for us to do it. And also it's always there. We have links with other schools update information, and it's a sort of reciprocal system without going into too much technical detail. So the sports website is our de facto way of communicating fixtures. Obviously, the sports website, we've got a couple of them. We hope that they are relatively exhaustive, but that might not be the case. In a minute, I think we'll put some links in the chat to the sports website and the sports guide. So this is a sports guide. This should be available on the parent area on the WIS website. We think this is also going to be put on the ESF apps shortly as well. If you go onto the website and you click on these areas up here, there are drop-down menus, and it gives you a pretty good overview of what the competitive sports situation is like. It gives you dates. We talk about our CAS activities and our providers, sports kit, and then you can actually look at the sports-specific information. This is a relatively static place with information which doesn't change too much, and it doesn't really link to the fixtures and what's happening on a day-to-day basis. This, however, is a good place to find the sports website. So if you go to the home menu, drop down, you can click on the sports website. And there are some guides here to take you to the sports website, which is sport.wis.edu.hk. I'll walk you through the desktop website to start with, and then we can look more closely at the mobile version. So when you land on the sports website, if you click that link through Wisdom, through the ESF app, or through the West Island website, this is where all of the information for competitive sport is going to be in terms of fixtures, transport, everything. If you open up, the key one which you're probably going to be looking for most is the sports calendar. If you click on that link on the left-hand side, it will take you to a landing page. It will show you what is on for the entirety of the week. If you were then to click onto a certain day, it will take you to a page like this. You can then see all of the details for this match. So, for example, if your child was playing in the boys U14 match today versus CIS, you can have you can click on the map. If you click on the little blue person at the side, it might take you to a landing screen like this. I've had a few inquiries about the password to this website. This is where the team list is kept. We don't share this website, this password with anybody. This is for the West Island teaching community. We don't share it for data protection reasons and for safeguarding reasons. However, if you want to access this, you can log in to the whole website. You can register, and I'll go through I'll show you the link to the guide later on if you wanted to do that. However, if you do click on the button which says more information or details rather, sorry, let's get my screen out of the way. It will take you to something like this. And this is where you can see all of the relevant fixture details. So it tells you the start time, that is the kickoff time of the game. So the tip-off for today's match will be at 4:30. It's away at CIS. If you click that link, it will take you to Google Maps. It will tell you the type of competition. For students, it's important that they note the timings. So we have a meet time that is always on the 3rd floor outside the PHE office, and then the return bus time. So the students will be getting on the bus at about 5:40 this evening. If you click on this button that says further information, it will tell you more relevant stuff that you may want to know. So we have the West Island in navy shirts because we're playing away. The bus will depart to West Island. And it will return via the ferry piers, Ferry Pier 3, Kennedy Town Pool, and West Island. So we have all the transport information there, and it's the student's responsibility and family's responsibility to make note of that information. If you want to, you can sync your calendar so it pops up into a Google Calendar or Apple Calendar or iCalendar. If you go back to the sports website and you click sports teams and fixtures and results, and then go down to this area here, you can select your child's team. So if we wanted to take the boys U14, for example, we can click on that button there where it says fixtures and results. It will then take us to this page here, and you can download your whole calendar by clicking that button, and it will give you step-by-step instructions with how to sync it. That will then go to your relevant calendar, whether that be Apple or Google or another type of calendar that you use. If you're to scroll further down, you'd see all of the students' fixtures throughout the course of the season. If I can hopefully share this one. Just double check I'm showing the right thing. Yep, cool. Sorry, just get this out of the way. Hopefully you can see my mobile website guide now. It does look slightly differently if you're looking at it on mobile, but the URL is exactly the same. You can look at it by date, and you can change the date so you can see on a different date there are all the fixtures listed. If you wanted to, you can click onto an individual fixture and it will give you the same information. It will give you the venue, it'll give you the map, which is just down here. It'll give you the start time, the return time, and the school transport arrangements. So all of that information is still available to you through the mobile site. Say we've got the map, which can be clicked on there as well. As we go down, you can also, through the same section down here, look at the sports section. And you can choose a sport of your choice. So for example, we were to take basketball, you can click on there and see all of the basketball fixtures, all of the different teams that are available. You can select your child's team. Once you do that, you can then have a few options. You've got the entire fixture list down there. You can add it to favorites, which means every time you go back into the website, it will be available for you. Or you can also add to your calendar. And then if you click that button, it will lead you through how to sync that. All of that information is available on the sports website and on the sports guide, and this can be shared hopefully with you guys in the chat. As we said, that password will never be shared, so that's just something to be aware of. And that is how we will, hopefully, Rob or VJ, are we back on the presentation? Sorry, I can't see.
Yes, we can see it, yep.
Brilliant. So this is the sports guide, and that has a full sort of step-by-step guide on how to access those different types of websites. There's no better or worse. The desktop version isn't better or worse than the mobile version. It comes down to preference, but that is where all of the information is stored. In terms of transport, we generally put on buses for the ISFHK fixtures. That is because they tend to depart straight from school for earlier start times and kickoffs. And generally, these come back through Central Ferry Piers, Kennedy Town Swimming Pool, and also West Island. This changes slightly for the HKSF. A lot of the fixtures for HKSF are drastically different times. They're sometimes on weekdays, and we, for the most part, don't provide transport. We find that if it's a 5 o'clock start for a basketball fixture or a football fixture, students vastly prefer to go home, get some food, get some drink, and then make their own way there. They like to go with their friends via Uber or taxi or public transport. In addition to that, we don't provide transport on a Saturday or a Sunday, for example. The expectation is the students make their own way there. In terms of dismissal, we are happy for students to make their own way away from the venue. The bus is always going to be there. However, if a student tells us that they want to go directly from that venue, we will listen to them, and we will allow that. Frequently, we have found that there are students whose plans have changed between getting on the bus at West Island over the course of a fixture. They've had a text from mum or dad, whoever they live with, saying, "Oh, can you please come and meet me at this location?" And it's more favourable for them to leave directly from the venue. They might be going on to different training sessions or other activities, and it might just be down to personal choice. So the bus transport will almost always be there. It will always be there if it has been scheduled. If it's a one-way bus journey, then obviously we won't have a return bus. but we don't force students to get on the bus. They are happy. If they're happy to be dismissed from the venue because it's more convenient for them, we are okay allowing that. Some of the transportation may be unsupervised. We have coaches who support our program. Some of these will meet directly at the venue. What we do is we count the students on, we register them, and then we send that register over to the coach, who then meets them directly at the venue, counts them off again, leads the fixture, and then puts the students back onto the transport and/or dismisses them from the venue. Some sports are really popular, and we also sometimes need to levy charges. We've kind of designated these sports depending on what they are. So we have some sports which we've kind of termed club sports, and these got a lot of local pathways which our students are already heavily involved in. These have significant local commitments. A lot of our students play football for Hong Kong Football Club and KCC, Sandy Bay Rugby, for example, a lot of external swimming providers. We have children who swim with Harry Wright competitively. And those are what we term club sports. We also have some sort of pathway sports. Generally, these aren't quite as easy to access in Hong Kong. And we find that students use the West Island sporting activities as their sort of main pathway into that sport. So like large numbers participate in basketball, volleyball, and badminton in particular. And this is both for their recreation and competition. As a result of that, it might mean that we need to charge for certain CAS activities. There is no sort of blanket rule to this. It's determined on a case-by-case basis. Again, depending on the pathways available to students. For some activities, we won't charge if we know that students are already paying quite significant fees outside of school. It's going to depend on the number of students that are wanting to be involved in that CAS activity. To take basketball, for an example, we have something in the region of about 160 students who are wanting to be involved in basketball. That is a huge number of students. I think it's like 15% of the school who want to participate in competitive basketball. And we need access to expertise through external coaches. And sometimes we will need to pass that charge on to parents. We have a ton of fixtures, which obviously we will need assistance with in terms of coaching. That is just for manpower in terms of having bodies in the right place at the right time, but also expertise as well. We have some incredibly high-performing teams. I use basketball as a really good example because we rely heavily on our basketball coaches. All of our top division teams, our best teams, are in Division 1 for HKSF and in Division 1 for the ISFHK. That is a high level of basketball, which requires a high level of knowledge. Similar to volleyball, so we do rely on these external coaches for fixture support and also, most importantly, their expertise so that we are ensuring that students are making progress and working towards skill development and being successful. What we can say is that any charges that we put in will always be as low as possible. Some activities we continue to run at a loss. We don't actually break even. So that any charges that are passed on, you can be assured that they are as low as we can possibly make it within the budgets that we have. In terms of sports kit, we ask all students to purchase their kit. That's not because we don't want to store it. It's just impossible. We have so many teams. It's like 3,500 pieces of kit once you add up all of the shorts, shirts, socks, dresses, everything. It's impossible for us to wash, manage it, distribute it, take it back in again over the course of all the seasons we do. The students can wear their sports kit to the CAS activities. So it's not just a case of wearing it during matches. They can wear it all the time during their activity. The feedback we've got from the student voice is they love having it personalized with their own name on the back. They feel it separates them from other schools in the local area. Obviously, it can be worn over multiple years as long as your child doesn't have a huge growth spurt. But the numbers that are allocated, they don't clash year on year. So you can go from year 9 into year 10, for example, and you can still wear the same kit and the numbers won't clash. It's also a great way of encouraging personal responsibility for students to organize themselves, to get themselves used to managing their own belongings and managing their calendars and taking responsibility for those types of things. There were some questions that were sent through, and I'll try to answer these. Hopefully, I've given a fairly detailed rundown, but I appreciate there might be some more to come. There's some confusion around which CAS to attend. If there is any confusion, part one would be to follow wisdom. If there is any confusion that isn't sort of cleared up by looking at the wisdom calendar, contact Miss Gigi Chung or myself. And that goes for if you want to start a new CAS as well. If there is space, we are happy to add people to CAS. But those going myself and Miss Gigi Chung, those are going to be the people to reach out to if there is any confusion. Generally speaking, once a CAS is set for the term, it will remain that way. The only changes will be if there is low take up or we need to put on additional sessions, for example. But for the most part, we do our best to keep those CAS activities on the same day at the same time. Sometimes though, they are cancelled. Yeah, in these instances, it can be unavoidable. For example, if a coach or personnel is off sick or unavailable for whatever reason, if we are hosting, I know that recently we've had to cancel some badminton CAS activities because we are bound to host in the ISFHK leagues. But we do understand that communication is important, especially timely communication. We don't always get it right, and that's something which, as we merge CAS and sports, we will need to sort of continue to evaluate our processes. We will do our very best and give as much heads up in advanced notice as possible. Sometimes things do fall through the cracks, which is super frustrating for everyone involved. I do appreciate that, but we will do our very best to give as much notice as possible. In terms of sports fixtures and communications, hopefully the sports website is going to be everyone's go-to place where we look. Generally, if there are any changes, anything within 48 hours, we will strive to send out some sort of email or some sort of communication to parents, to those students who are affected by it. On occasion, it may be last minute. For example, we had a scenario at the start of the year where we had a rugby fixture penciled in. 2 days before, we didn't have a team. We had 4 players. The day before, we had an influx of 4 players who said, "Yeah, I play for Sandy Bay. Please, let's go and play rugby. We're desperate to play." In those instances, we will endeavour as best as possible to put the activity on, but also we'll make sure that anything is communicated in as timely fashion as possible. What we don't want to do is take away any opportunities or stop students from participating where possible. But we do appreciate there are some frustrations around that. And there's a question about transport locations and timings. All of that information is available on the sports website. Bus timings, etc., will be updated. Generally, it's done maybe 3 to 4 days in advance. However, sometimes it can be updated as late as sort of 36 hours in advance in terms of the drop-off and pick-up times. For the most part, the locations are 100% accurate. I'm aware of one incident which happened, I think 3 weeks ago, just for Horizons Week, regarding cross-country, where the sports website was actually showing the incorrect pin on a map. That's the first time it's happened. That was human error in terms of the entry that was made at the back end of our computer system. That is a one-off, and that's the first time in, I think, 720 fixtures that there has been an error on the map. We have since put in a procedure to double-check all locations that are entered into the sports website prior to any of those fixtures being published. So any timings, etc., should all be on the website. Any locations should all be on the website. We don't tend to advise on arrival times back to Central Ferry Piers. We find that frequently, if we say a student is going to be back at the Central Ferry Piers or West Island by 6 o'clock and it doesn't happen, parents get panicky, parents start to get frustrated, and it causes more problems for ourselves. So we list the departure time from the venue. For example, as I said earlier, CIS will depart at 5:40. If needed, parents can go on, they can look at the traffic, they can put the information into Google, and they can estimate that arrival, or just assume that from CIS to Ferry Piers is going to be around about a 15-minute journey. If there are any significant delays, generally the coach in charge will let me know, and if needed, I can then pass that information out to parents. For example, if there's been a traffic accident and they're in standstill traffic on their way back from Harrow School, I can then go and send that information out to the relevant students and relevant parents. That hasn't happened in the last 2.5 years, touch wood. I don't want to jinx it now. But it's rare, but that will be the procedure if there are any queries or concerns with regards to transport. How can my child join this team? Hopefully that's kind of been discussed earlier on in the webinar. The best advice would be to sign up and join CAS. If there's any doubts or anything, start a dialogue, get in touch with me or a relevant teacher. And also we do put a lot of information out into the student bulletin. So tell your child to keep an eye out on that, sign up for through any forms that get released. How teams are there for certain sports? It varies year on year, but everything can be seen through the sports website. But generally, we hover around anywhere between 78 and 85 teams over the course of the year. For different sports, we sometimes have A and B teams. In these teams, there are different levels, yes. We are generally selecting based on ability and also age. With an A team for U14, for example, it may be predominantly made up of year 9 students, whereas a B team may be predominantly made up of year 8 students. These then go into different divisions in the ISFHK. We do need to select teams well in advance because there are some sort of considerations we need to make with regards to being selected for a B team and then moving up to an A team, or being selected for an A team, you are not able to move down to a B team. Some really specific like ISFHK rules. So we do need to be quite careful. But yeah, in general, there are differences between A and B teams. A teams go into higher divisions, B teams go into lower divisions. And all this does is helps to balance the level of competition so that everybody has a positive experience. When is whatever sport for year 7? How does selection work? Hopefully we've discussed selection. A lot of the sport-specific information is available on the sports guide. It's generally later on in the year for year 7s. The ISFHK works by allowing students to get settled a little bit. The first proper year 7 competition is basketball, which is in season 2, and then it'll start to ramp up with netball in season 3 and football from season 4 in April. How can we register for external sporting competitions? Some specific competitions like fencing and sailing, things which are quite niche, which we don't really offer as part of our sports program. If you have a need to register and a school contact, please contact myself or Miss McNeil. We do work quite closely with the other ESF schools in terms of providing coaching expertise. So it may be possible that we can work with other schools to enter various different competitions. Our current kit supplier is College Pro. The tender is up for renewal in 2026. I'm not entirely certain how that process works. I wasn't actually at West Island when the last tender process started. In general, we have quite very few problems with College Pro. We order several thousand pieces of kit. For us as a supplier, they're very receptive and they are incredibly cheap in comparison to some of the other ones, and they are quick on the personalization. But I do appreciate there may be some teething problems. We generally find that these are solvable quite quickly and also very, very specific to individual parents and families. So if you do have a specific query or frustration, can you please just drop me an email and then we can look at your individual circumstance. Where can I find information on PHE? Your child does have access to a Google Classroom, and this has various documents on it. It will have different assessment criteria, the types of assessment that they will be completing over the course of the unit, but it also gives them a whole year overview on a sort of day-by-day outline. Is PE compulsory in year 10? Yes, absolutely. It's the best subject they do in year 10. It's called core PE. We do also offer GCSE PE. This is assessed, and there are 2 elements to this, a practical and a theory element. But each student in year 10 currently gets, I'm just trying to think now, we get 2 lessons per 7-day cycle. So yes, it's compulsory, it's core, and 2 per cycle. Just to wrap up, I think it's important to recognise that, as much as we strive for it, we are never going to be perfect. Sadly, I would love to be, but I think it's probably unrealistic. We will always listen to your feedback. We are always striving to improve. So if you do have anything that you would like to feedback, please, by all means, feel free to reach out directly to me or to Mr. Bradshaw, and we will always take that on. We do have a very specific lens whereby we are looking at it through an operational sense, through the way in which teachers and schools operate, and sometimes there are blind spots which we don't recognise through the lens of a parent. We are just fully committed to providing some really high quality opportunities. We want students to love sport, and we want them to love participating, not necessarily in competition, but activity in general. And we are a massive program. There's no getting away from it. We do want students to have a really memorable experience, and we do want them to develop. We do want them to improve, and we also want them to be successful as well. So I hope that kind of gives an overview. I apologise if I've gone on a bit too long there, but hopefully that information is quite useful. It is all available on the various websites. I can try and copy and paste some links shortly. But otherwise, thank you very much for your time, and really hope that your student, your child, loves participating. And if there's anything we could do to improve, please don't hesitate to reach out.
That's amazing, Owen. Thank you so much for that. An incredible level of detail there. We know that it's been gone through very, very quickly, but we hope that we've managed to address all of the questions that we had prior to the webinar. May has been able to answer all of the questions in the Q&A, but if you do have any additional questions, please do feel free to get in contact with Owen or the sports team if you've got specific questions which you don't feel like have been addressed as part of that webinar. The webinar has been recorded and will be shared with all participants tomorrow. There'll also be a short survey to gather some feedback on it. But I think that, as you can see, Owen is dealing and the sports team are dealing with a really, really picture, both in PE, in terms of CAS, in terms of competition, and they're really trying their absolute best to deliver as much sport for as many students as possible. Like Owen said, it's never going to be perfect. The PE program has moved on, and the competitive sport and CAS program has moved on in leaps and bounds in recent years, and we're always listening to feedback and trying to perfect that. We've got staff who are teaching often 4 or 5 periods a day, and then are also taking 2 to 3 competitive sports fixtures out per week. I can't convey to you strongly enough how hard the PE team work to try and deliver an excellent program for students here and try and give them as much access and opportunity as they possibly can. So please, if things aren't perfect, please have some sympathy. Please provide us with some constructive feedback and try and help us to make it as good as we can. What we're really trying to emphasize here, I think, if there is any confusion ever about timings, about fixtures, we're trying to emphasize student responsibility. So the student should always know where they're going and when. And this might be a little tricky when they come into year 7, but we find that these issues actually improve and disappear and dissipate as they move throughout the school and they become more aware of how the sports program works. So we appreciate that it's different to how things were at primary school and maybe how different to how things operated at Kennedy. You would expect that we offer more sports. There is far more complicated picture, far more sports going out on a daily basis. So there is some complication. I think we'll try and offer this webinar earlier next year for parents, for new parents, or maybe parents that just want to try and understand it again. I think an amazing feature for parents is the calendar sync. So if you do have students who are participating in a specific team, please use the calendar sync facility within the website, and that will always mean just that within your phone you've then got a note of what fixture your students or your children should be participating in, and then just cross-reference that by talking to your students and saying, I've got a note here that says you're participating in a basketball fixture today, can you tell me about that? So that information is available on the website, a reminder in your phone, and then just by talking to your students. We don't currently have any more questions in the Q&A, so I am going to close the webinar here. Once again, thank you very much to Owen. Thank you for attending today. We hope that's been helpful to you. We'll get the recording out tomorrow and we'll take some feedback, and hopefully this webinar has been very, very helpful to you. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks very much for attending. Goodbye.